Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Lessons Learned. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Thomas Doonan, author, former representative for the North Carolina Writers Network, and a good friend. My name is Vincent Vezza. I'm an author, the founder of Hidden Treasure Novels, and the current representative for the Metro North chapter of the North Carolina Writers Network. Thomas is going to share with you today his seventh lesson in a series of lessons that he's brought to our attention as a writer. And Thomas, I'd like to turn the stage over to you.
Well, Vincent, thank you for the invitation on this rainy day here in North Carolina. And thank you folks for joining me for a few minutes. I'm going to give you a few ideas on the second short story that I've written. It's called Waiting Room Frenzy. Sort of a tough topic to handle, a hospital surgical waiting room, and turn it into a whimsical notion story. So with that said, let's go to the first two paragraphs, or the first paragraph of the story, and let's lead into it like that. It's 4:45 a.m. The opening lines are, "Geez Louise, who turned the lights on? Rebecca, where are you? Are you here? What the jabbers is going on? It can't be 5 o'clock, can it? Becky, will you answer me? I can't work alone. Where the fiddlesticks are you?" Tobias yelled. Rebecca sat in silence in the surgical waiting room nook, hidden behind a 6-foot silk ficus tree, repositioned last night by a maintenance woman. Tobias, her identically sized brother, couldn't see her. She loved teasing him. "I'm here, little fella. I'm straightening my space," Rebecca said. And that's how the story begins. Rebecca and Tobias sort of going back and forth at one another. Identically sized twins, and they're the folks who are going to narrate the whimsical story for us. So, Waiting Room Frenzy. The setting that I picked is, it just sort of happened. I had been the previous day with the family in a hospital waiting room, surgical waiting room for 4 hours. And it was only after I got home that I realized, you know what? I think there's a story in those 4 hours and in that room. So very early on, figured, well, okay, I'm going to have it narrated by two siblings, Rebecca and Tobias. The waiting room that I described is an actual hospital surgical waiting room in the great state of North Carolina. And if you get into the first 4, 5, 6, 7 pages or longer, I get into a lot of detail describing the room, because as the story evolves or unfolds, most of the elements in the room become props that the characters use to sort of tell their farcical story. I knew from the first word or from the first sentence how the story would end, which probably for most of us is pretty important. Knowing the beginning and knowing how it's end, you sort of hate to be in a position of spending 4 or 5 months writing a piece and still can't figure out how it's going to end. You might have to trash the whole thing because it just doesn't come to you. There's a logical conclusion to the story. I knew the exact ending. I also knew that because I was dealing with what's normally a very serious topic, people waiting in a hospital room or surgical hospital room for their family or friends, I had to be so over the top with the characters and with the activity in the room that the reader would know from the very beginning, this guy's not serious, this is funny. The story became very heavy on dialogue. It was very quick moving, and the characters, as you'll see on the next slide, are totally outrageous. And I also did something, I time-stamped the story by the minute. So it starts at, I think, 5:15 a.m., then it goes like to 5:42, then 5:47. And then after each timestamp, we have a different element of the story. And that sort of shadows any of us who would be sitting in a waiting room, sort of looking up the clock and waiting, or looking at our watches and waiting. And I thought it was sort of a neat little trick to give a little bit of a sense of being in a hospital waiting room. So with that said, let's look at the characters that we put in the story, because so much of the story is about them. They've got nicknames. You see the nicknames in green. We start with the two siblings, which have already been introduced, Rebecca and Tobias. And I picked names from the Old Testament, and that'll become evident toward the end of the story. There were two concierges in the room, the actual room that I was in, but I created one. Her name was Polly, a senior citizen, very motherly, very grandmotherly, trying to help people in the waiting room. And she was assisted by an ex-Marine drill sergeant, Donna May. And both of them, Polly and Donna Mae, their job was to control the room. The first character after that you meet is a woman, we never get her direct name, but she's introduced to us in terms of she's yik-yakking, she won't stop, she's a jibber-jabber, she's touching things constantly. Tobias begins the story by giving people nicknames. He named her Ants in the Pants, and she follows through the waiting room through 4 hours. The next person we meet is a man who marched face first, obviously he was on his cell phone, into the glass door, into the surgical waiting room, bloodied his nose, and he was followed by his Uber driver. Tobias comments on him that he's a dumb Yankee. So now you probably know the story set in the South. Then we're introduced to a young couple, both dressed in their pajamas, probably 18 or 19 years old. They get the nickname, or the woman does, Blanket Girl. She's totally covered under a blanket during the whole time she's there, doesn't even realize her boyfriend who came in with her is out of surgery at a certain point, and he's ready to check out. She's still under her blanket, phoning, sorry. Well, phoning is the word. Then we have an elderly couple and a granddaughter, the jokester. And the jokester's a guy, sort of senior citizen, just watching everything that goes on. He makes a lot of comments, and his granddaughter's chuckles, and she just laughs at everything in the room. She also adds a touch of sobriety to the room, comforting patients or people waiting when she sees they need to be comforted. There's a family of 4 that are obsessed with their phones, and all 4 of them are sitting in chairs identically, elbows on the arms of the chairs, head bent down, looking at their phones. And Tobias nicknamed the headbenders. And they do funny things. They don't just sit there all the time. There's a family of 4, and the father snores a lot. Then there's a wealthily dressed woman who came in with her mother, and the woman insists on bringing her service dog again. The service dog happens to be an Irish wolfhound. And even the ex-Marine drill sergeant, Donna Mae, can't handle that situation. And then finally, best of all, I think, is that there's a family of 7, and they're called the Romper Roomers, because the 5 kids literally just romping all over the room, with the lead played by a 4-year-old. And Buster literally did his darndest to break every element in the room. So you've got a surgical waiting room described in detail. And the fun for me of writing this short story, it was just all character driven and dialogue driven. And that's it. So let's look at the end, the surprise ending. Put my glasses on here. For decades, every chair lent comfort to patients' family members as the hospital saw their health needs. The chairs heard every conversation and cataloged every visitor's feelings. During the past 17 years, the 2 chairs carried forward this tradition. Chairs Rebecca and Tobias had felt and seen 2 lifetimes of waiting room stories. Today was another. Thank you for your story, kids. The Rebecca and Tobias were chairs, and they were 2 of the original chairs that were put into that waiting room 17 years previous. And obviously they sat there for 17 years. They felt, as people sat on the chairs, they heard the stories that happened in the waiting room. And this was one more little short story where Tobias and Rebecca recounted that particular morning's activity. And with that said, thank you very much, Vince. Hopefully next week, many of you will come back and look at my first full-length novel called Shadowed by Fear. It's a paranormal story of a coming of age of a young girl who was lost on a mountain and chased by her phobias. And there's a summary of the 2 short stories that we've looked at in sort of some detail now, and Shadowed by Fear, up and coming. And thank you for the time, Vince.
Well, thank you, Thomas. This has been really informative. It's just amazing. I've watched the development of your short stories as a beta reader. I found it instructive too that part of our North Carolina Writers Network group serves as beta readers, and one of our group members, fellow author, well, I guess I could mention his name, right? Dr. William Cottrell, as a physician, was able to give you some good feedback.
He did.
I'm going to stop share so you can talk a little bit, I hope, about the importance of a beta reader and to the project and to the story development.
Yeah, just real quickly, it's easy enough for us as an author to sit down and sort of sketch out and outline a story and then put words on paper, and we understand it up here. That's not what we're writing it. We're writing a story for somebody else to understand or to have enjoyment from what we're reading. So Bill Cottrell was my initial beta reader for this particular story, and as a former hospital worker in surgery, his comments were just very instructive. And obviously, I changed a number of ways that I approached the activity in that waiting room, and his help was just tremendous. It was a second set of eyes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, I thank you so much, Thomas. This, these sessions, I hope, are helpful to fellow writers. I hope those writers will think about joining our chapter. Since we meet virtually now, they don't have to live in the greater Charlotte area. They can be anywhere where the tube will reach them. They're certainly welcome to join these lessons learned sessions, and perhaps they can contribute to those sessions. I encourage writers to take a look at our website, www.hiddentreasurenovels.com. We will be hosting these lessons learned on the HTN YouTube playlist and channel. Thanks again, Tom, for all your hard work and for your insights. Look forward to seeing everyone next week, same time, same station, Thursday afternoon. Have a great day, everyone, and a great weekend.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.